Hey, it is Rowdy HQ back finally with another video. It's been months since I've made a video. I'm pretty sure my last one was my draft analysis or predictions. It was probably a mock draft, but I wanted to get back just in time for the season to kick off. It's the best time of the year for sports fans, at least for me as a sports fan. So, this is a division standings. It's not a power rankings video, but it's how I think every division will look like at the end of the season. I've had this video in the works for a while, but I think this is the best time to release it because we know about injuries, we know about suspensions, what teams' current rosters look like heading into the season. So yeah, let's get into it. So first off, AFC East. In first place, I think this is a toss-up for some people who are Jets fans, but I I think that the Bills have been overhated this entire offseason. The way their season ended was pretty embarrassing, getting humiliated at home by the Bengals, but even then, I gotta say, I think people overlooked the injuries they had last year. Their best pass rusher, I think their best defender and Von Miller was out. Micah Hyde, who's I think their second best defender, he got injured early in the season. They were having Trey White, their number one corner, come back from ACL surgery. And I think the issues with the run game and their O line got exposed. But this year, I think they've taken a lot of steps to address that. They got a guard early in the draft. They brought in some running back help. And I think that overall, they didn't really lose a lot of talent. I know they lost Tremaine Edmonds, but I think Matt Milano is the better linebacker, returning a lot of talent. And I also think they added a lot of talent. And Josh Allen also did not play well last year. So I have them not only winning the AFC East, but I also have them winning the conference. I think that this is the best team the Bills have fielded in their Super Bowl window, so to speak. So on to number two, the Jets. Some people have them not making the playoffs. I'm worried about their O line, but outside of that, I think that this team is pretty complete. They got the quarterback situation resolved. I think their receiver room looks pretty good now. It might not be elite, but Garrett Wilson is probably going to have a breakout year, potentially an all pro. Good running back situation now with Dalvin Cook and Brees Hall. Brees Hall will come back at some point. He was really good last season before he got injured. Like I said, the O line scares me, and I think that this could be the team's downfall if they don't fix it. Because I don't know if Aaron Rodgers is scrambler. I mean, he can still scramble, but I wouldn't consider him an elusive threat like Kyler Murray. I don't think he's gonna be able to get out of sacks by Micah and Nick Bosa rushing him. But the defense, on the other hand, this defense I think can be sneakily good. Some of the Jets players have talked about how good they'll be on paper. I don't really see any weaknesses. The D line's deep, and it, of course, they have some all stars on there, some borderline all stars. Linebackers should be good. The secondary should be really good. It could be elite. Sauce. It could potentially be the best in the NFL with him. And another thing, I want to be surprised at some point if they trade for O linemen. I could maybe see them getting Bakhtiari at some point if the Packers say, okay, this guy's not going to sign back with us. Let's just send him to his boy Aaron Rodgers. I could see that potentially. See the Jets overpaying for him too if it's not looking good because this is a win now team. If they get the O line situated, I think that this could be the conference winner if they get it situated early. I don't see why people are saying they won't make the playoffs because they have too much talent, but I don't think they're quite as good as the Bills. I think that the Bills have more talent at receiver. I think the quarterback is about an even split. The O line's both. I'd say the Bills O line's slightly better, but right now I think I would give the Bills defense a slight edge. But I could see the Jets winning the division, but I don't know. I'm higher on the Bills than most people. I probably said earlier in the video that the Bills were a certified lock, but it's there's a lot to go on right now. So anyway, I'm ranting. Third place, I have the Dolphins. I'm not quite as high on the Dolphins as other people. I think they have a lot of talent, but I don't know how well it's going to fit together. They have aging secondary duo with Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey. Those two are probably on the downside of nice careers, a Hall of Fame career for Ramsey. And the defensive line should be good too for the Dolphins. I think the defense should be good, but the O line, the O line, I'm not too high on. The receiving room outside of Tyreek and Jalen, I mean, that's maybe the best tandem in the NFL, but outside of that, they lost their tight end. I think the running back room is deep, but they don't have a lot of star power. And lastly, I'm not very high on Tua. I'm not high on him as other people. I consider him a high level backup to borderline average starter. I just I don't think he can do a lot with his legs, and I'm worried about the O line just getting this guy injured continuously. I think that the team's decent. I could see them squeaking in as a 7th seed, but this is a stacked division, and yeah, I don't think they're as good as the Bills or the Jets. And last place, a team that I think that this is I have a thing. I think that I'm gonna make a list of Caleb Williams tank train or a tank list. I don't know if that'd be a video, but yeah, this team would qualify for my Caleb Williams tank roster or list. I don't think that this team's going to be good. I think they have some talent. I like the corner they picked up, Christian Gonzalez, and they've picked up some good free agents, but I'm not high on Mac Jones. I think that this O line will be okay, not great. I think that the defense will be, I think that this team is going to be mid. And in this division, I don't think mid is going to result in having a mid record because I think that I think there's a chance that they could go 0-6 in the division. I don't think that'll happen. They'll probably get a win or two off somebody, but yeah, I think that this is a team that's close to rebuilding. I just think that they have decent depth, but not a lot of star power anywhere. If Juju's your best receiver or maybe best player on offense, that's not very good, in my opinion. So I see them finishing last. All right, on to the AFC North. I think that this probably is going to be the best division in football. I have the Bengals repeating as first place champions, but I could see this being an upset because the defense had a lot of turnover in the secondary. But I'm not going to butcher the defensive coordinator's name, but I think he's the best DC in the NFL. He's the only guy that I've seen shut down Mahomes, not routinely, but I mean, he hasn't shut him down, but he's had success against Mahomes routinely. Not in the championship game, but yeah. And the offense, they brought in Orlando Brown Jr., who showed up in the playoffs. I'll give him credit there. I wasn't too high on him before. I thought he was overrated, but he was good in the playoffs. The receiver core continues to be maybe the best in the NFL. They got Joe Mixon back. They routinely bring in good tight ends like Irv Smith. He's a good tight end, not an all-star, but he's good. And the defensive front seven, it's just good. You don't see a lot of star power outside of Trey Hendrickson, but it's consistently good. All the players are top, I don't know, top 25% of players probably in the league, at least average. And that equals a good defense, front seven. And the secondary, I was a Jesse Bates fan. I was higher on him than I think most people. I like ball hawking safeties. But if the secondary it's pretty young, but if they can tighten up, especially down the stretch, I could see this team making the Super Bowl again. They'll probably make another deep playoff run, even if their record doesn't indicate being a powerhouse. I could see them going 11-6 and still being in the championship game. Number 2, the Ravens. I thought about putting the Steelers here because everything I've seen, it just looks like everything's going right for them. Kenny Pickett's looked better in the preseason. I like the weapons they have, and they killed the draft. But I'm still have the Ravens second place. I thought they were the best defense down the stretch last season, but they've had a lot of turnover, so I'm not sure it's going to be quite as good. But the Ravens generally have a top end defense. I think they'll hunker down if they don't start off well this year. And I think this is the best offense Lamar's ever played with. The O-line is always good for the Ravens if they're healthy, but I finally think that they have borderline number ones. Zay Flowers looked really good from what I've seen. He was good in college, so he was a first round pick. He's probably going to be good. Odell, if he can stay healthy, is good. I think that takes pressure off Rashad Bateman. He'd probably be an elite number 3 or a really good number 3. You have Mark Andrews, good running backs. Lamar, I think, is going to cook this year. This might be Lamar's best season, even though he's an MVP. He might put up really good passing numbers because he did the same in college. And number 3 or third in the division, the Steelers. I could see them finishing second, maybe even first, because I love their pass rush. I think that the secondary is going to be good now with Joey Porter, and they got Patrick Peterson. The O-line should be better. Like I said, I love their draft, especially early. I'm not quite. I think Najee is probably a bit overrated, but even then, I think that the running game will be decent because Jalen Warren's a good number 2, and the receiving room has the capacity to be. I don't want to say elite, but Pat Freiermuth is one of the better tight ends. George Pickens is a playmaker. He was good down the stretch, or he was good throughout the year. He just didn't get a lot of catches or targets. Um, I'm trying to think of Deontay Johnson. He's good. He's going to be playing hungry in a contract year. I think they drafted somebody else. I'm tripping, but they probably have a good number 3 receiver. I think that this whole team's just going to be good. Pittsburgh always, at the very least, is like an 800 or a 500 team, but this year I think they'll get a few more wins above that. But this division's stacked, so even a good season doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make the playoffs in the North. And last, I honestly could see Cleveland finishing way higher than this, but I'm just going off history. The team disappointed last year. I thought Watson looked worse than Brissett. I think he'll look better this year, but this team has too much talent to be finishing 4th. But compared to the other talent in the division, I don't know if talent alone is going to get you above last place. I want to see this team success. I want to see them put the talent together because I haven't really seen that yet. I mean, they have arguably the best pure running back in the NFL and Nick Chubb. The O-line's taken a hit over the years, but it still should be good. Amari Cooper was a fleece of the Cowboys. I don't know why other teams didn't go after him harder. David Njoku, I just think that they have talent everywhere, but like I said, I don't know if just stacking talent is going to get you far. I want to see a good team to put them higher. And based off history, I just got to say I got to put them at 4th. I could see them finishing higher though. That whole division could finish in a different order. With the AFC South, I don't think that this is going to be a hard choice for anybody. The Jags should steamroll this division. I think there's a good case for them going 6-0 in the division. The team was surprising. It was the surprise at the NFL last year. They looked seasoned. T-Law, especially down the stretch, looked weathered, or I don't know if that's the word, but he looked like a vet down the stretch. Early in his career, he looked a little rattled, and I had that same opinion at Clemson. That was one of my biggest knocks. I thought he looked a bit rattled at times, but down the stretch, he looked poised. Calvin Ridley looked good. I was afraid how he'd look upon in return after a year off, but he looked spry. I'm trying to think. Christian Kirk, his contract was ridiculed last offseason. He looked good. He lived up to the contract. All the free agents they brought in, maybe they overpaid a bit for everybody, but they all lived up to the contract, or they all played well. I think they played above what people expected, and that's the reason that they had such a quick turnaround from being the worst team or picking first overall to go into the divisional. That's what happens when you shell out a lot of money, but you got to give them credit because they hit where they needed to. And I'm trying to think of the Trayvon Walker. Hopefully he has a bounce back year because I don't think he looked he wasn't better than people that I thought should have gone ahead of him, like Aiden Hutchinson, Sauce Gardner. But hopefully he bounces back. I don't know if this team still has the talent to win the Super Bowl. I think that it's a very balanced team, but if you gave them like a Davante Adams, then I think okay, now they have the X factor on offense. or if you gave them a corner on defense, then I think they could win the Super Bowl. But right now, I have them. I think I'd put them in a contenders category, but I don't know if I'd put them in a favorite category. That could change though. I mean, free agency, we can't even speculate about free agency now, but that's another video. The rest of the division, I think this whole order for second, third, and fourth can be interchanged. I had the Texans finishing second because I like Stroud. The O line is not going to be as good as I thought it'd be because they got injured. Kenyon Green is out for the year. And I think that the team is mid, but in this division, I think mid could get you second place because I like the Schultz pickup. As a Cowboys fan, I like Schultz. I'm trying to think of the receiver. Noah Brown is okay. If he's like your number 3, that's not bad. John Mechie's coming back. He was pretty good in college. Like I said, I think that this team, Dameon Pierce is good. I have him in fantasy, and he was good last year in fantasy until he got injured. Like I said, I think that this team is mid, but in this division, mid, I think is fine. The defense with DeMeco Ryans, I think should be good. I like their secondary with the Jimmy Ward pickup. Will Anderson should help the D line. I see this team finishing around a little below 500. In this division, I think that might get you second place. But the Titans, I could see being better than them, especially if Ryan Tannehill lives up to not necessarily lives up, but he's played good in the past. And they still have star talent, albeit I think it's aging, and I'm afraid they'll get injured. But Derrick Henry is a beast, even if he's not in his prime anymore. DeAndre Hopkins was a good pickup, in my opinion, even if he's not a Pro Bowl receiver anymore. They still have talent on defense, but the O line is probably going to be bad. Maybe I should have put them in second, but I think that the Texans have a little more talent around the places. I think their secondary is noticeably better. I think that their D line could be better with Will Anderson. Maybe not because Jeffrey Simmons is good, but I think the comparison, I think that the Texans are mid throughout the roster, while I think the Titans are good in some spots and pretty bad in others. And for fourth place, I could honestly see the Colts finishing way higher, but I'm just going to assume that we're going to see Florida Anthony Richardson, where there was a lot of highs and then there was an equal amount of lows. I think this is a year for him to feel out the NFL. He's got decent weapons, but I don't know what the deal with Jonathan Taylor is. If Jonathan Taylor's not back, I don't think that this team's going to be nearly as good because the one year he made the All-Pro, he legitimately carried this roster. He was the MVP. He was irreplaceable that year. I don't know if we're going to ever get that Jonathan Taylor again, but they need him. I think the receiving room is decent. O-line is not nearly as what it used to be. And the defense, I think, is going to be okay. But I think that the issue is that I think they're less mid than the Texans, and I don't think they have as much star power as the Titans. So that's why I put them fourth. And lastly, AFC West. I think that this is going to be the shocker, but with the Chargers, I don't think that this team really has any excuses to not finish first because with how much I think the media's touted him, I think Justin Herbert's career up to now has been a bit disappointing because his gifts were from Zeus because he's huge. I think he probably has the best pure arm in the NFL. He can zip it, and I also think he has great accuracy. Some of his throws are just ridiculous, but I don't think that that's translated to winning. I think that the Chargers might be the most cursed franchise in the NFL. It seems like luck never goes their way. But this year, I think that the O-line should be good. Rashawn Slater's coming back. Jamari Salyer was a pleasant surprise as a fill-in. I think they have decent interior. I don't know how good their depth is, but I think that the O-line should be maybe top 12, top 33%, or I don't know. I'm not good with percentages, but anyway, the receiver room, if it can stay healthy, it should be one of the best in the NFL because Mike Williams, Keenan Allen is a good 1-2 punch, even if they're aging. Quentin Johnston, there's not a lot of pressure on him to get double covered or produce as a number one. So they can just use him on vertical routes, use his big playability he had in college. The receiver room at the fourth spot is really deep. I think it might be the deepest receiver core in the NFL. I like Gerald Everett as a tight end. I think he's really good. He's not a Pro Bowler, but he's better than average. You have one of the most productive running backs in the NFL. And the defense, it was a mega disappointment last year. But I'm going to bank on JC Jackson not being horrible again. Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack. Hopefully, I think they might be past their primes. Well, especially Khalil Mack. But you hope that both of them can at least get 8 sacks, hopefully double digit. I don't know if the run defense is still going to be good, but I think that the defense will be decent to above average. Well, I think that the offense should lead the NFL in at least passing, especially with Kellen Moore. As a Cowboys fan, I was indifferent when Kellen Moore left because I think he had brought a lot of good ideas, but I also think he couldn't adjust. But with this team, he likes to pass it. And well, he likes to pass in general. And I think that this is the best spot for him because I think this team can pass it at a more successful clip than the Cowboys. At least the Cowboys could last year because the Chargers offense at receiver is exponentially more talented than the Cowboys were last year. The Chiefs could easily win this division. And of course, I have them having them make the playoffs because I mean, Pat Mahomes can carry a bad to mediocre roster. I think the one thing that's the X factor with this team is outside of Kelce, I think there's a lot of toss up with this receiver room. There's a lot of day 2 picks with Sky Moore, Rashee Rice. You have Justin Ross coming back from injury. If these guys can take the step up and have like 800, 900, maybe even 1,000-yard receiving years, I think that this team will win first place in the division. But however, if Marquez Valdes-Scantling is your best receiver, or at least wide receiver, and then I'm not too high on this offense. Kelce got injured. I think he's going to be back sooner than later. He might miss week 1 or tomorrow. But when you have Kelce, your receiver room's fine. But outside of that, you lost Juju, who was good, who is your best wide receiver. If one of these young guys cannot step up to that level, I think that the Chiefs are going to struggle. The running game is good, and they have the best pass blocking O-line in the NFL. At least I'm pretty sure from like PFF or somebody like that. So, of course, they're not going to be bad regardless of what their wide receiver room looks like. But the Chargers always play them close. And if you're giving me the Chargers receiving room overall or skill positions versus the Chiefs, even with Kelce, I'm taking the Chargers because I think that they have all-stars everywhere. The only all-star I see with the Chiefs is Kelce, but that could change. Defense-wise, this is the thing. If they don't have Chris Jones until week 8, they're not starting off hot because Chris Jones, I think even as with how good he is, I think he's underrated. At this point, he's probably the best defensive tackle in the NFL, even above Aaron Donald, because he's getting up there in age. I might be biased in saying this because I saw him even school Zach Martin like 2 years ago. He single-handedly won the Chiefs the game against the Cowboys 2 years ago. He was a one-man wrecking crew. I think that this defense is good. And Dean Spagnuolo always has like the principle of bend, don't break. And they've always come up clutch, like in the Super Bowl. My thing is, once again, I think that this defense might be too young. There's a lot of X factor here. If George Karlaftis takes another leap, and I'm trying to think of Trent McDuffie, if he can take a leap up to all-star, like borderline all-star, I think that the defense could be good, really good. But I just think that this team has a lot of what ifs for me to put them first. That's my take. They have 3 guys that if they have starting the whole year are maybe top 10, at least they're all top 15 with Mahomes, Kelce, and Chris Jones. If you have those 3 guys, of course you're going to make the playoffs. But everywhere else, excluding the O-line, because the O-line's good, I think that there's a lot of toss-up. I think that they could be good. If everyone outside of those 3 guys plays like borderline all-stars, I have them finishing first. But I'm going to regress to the median and say that they're going to be decent. And I think that the Chargers have a lot more than decent on offense. They have a lot of star power. So kind of harped on that point. I'll move on. Um, Third place. This was close. Actually, on second look, I think I should have had the Raiders at third, but I'm just gonna go with how it's on the screen because I think this is a toss up. The Denver defense is always going to be good to me. It'll probably be a top 5 to top 10 unit because Surtain's a beast. Their defense is always good. However, they've been riddled again by injuries to receiver. I think with Sean Payton, he's a great offensive mind. I think Russell Wilson's going to have a bounce back year. The O line still scares me, but if the Raiders are fourth, then the Broncos are like barely third. Because once again, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs because they've been injured. I mean, their best receiver is Cortland Sutton right now because Tim Patrick's out. Cortland Sutton's like 5 years removed from a Pro Bowl. Jerry Jeudy can't stay healthy. The running back room is coming, or at least Javonte Williams is coming back from injury. I think I just have them finishing above the Raiders because the defense, I think, could be really good, unlike the Raiders. I think outside of the defensive line for the Raiders, I think it's going to be pretty bad. But anyway, finishing fourth, Jimmy G, I'm not high on. I want to see Aiden O'Connell right away. He looked good in the preseason. If they start Aiden O'Connell, I think they actually will finish third. But I'm under the presumption that Jimmy G will be starting. Devontae Adams might request a trade to maybe the Jets, but if you have him, you have Renfro. I like Michael Mayer and Josh Jacobs. I think, and you have a good left tackle. I think that this offense will be good. I don't think it will be elite or great, but I think it'll be good enough. It'll probably be top half of the league, maybe 50th percentile average. Defense is going to be bad except for the D line, which if you have a really good D line and the rest of your defense is bad, then that can make up for some of it because that's where you want to be the best on defense. But Max Crosby needs some help with Chandler Jones. I don't know what that whole rant from Chandler was online. He probably wants out. I'm trying to think of the defensive tackle. I like him. I forgot his name from Tech, but he should contribute. If he can play like at an all-star level, then I think that the defense will be mid then. If the D line can be like top 5 in the league, it could be with the talent, at least the names they have. But yeah, I could see them finishing third. I honestly should probably put the Raiders third. I think that the Broncos and the Raiders are definitely not making the playoffs. NFC East, call me a homer, but the NFC East hasn't had a repeat winner since I forgot when. It's been at least like a decade. But the big difference with the Cowboys and the Eagles this year is that this is also not like a unique point. I think that the Cowboys roster got better. I think that the Eagles roster stayed neutral. And I'll get to that when I talk to the Eagles. The Cowboys, I think that the thing that's being undersold is that they went 12-5 and the offense was pretty mid. I mean, the O line, especially when Terrence Steele went down, was bad. It was one of the, I think it might have been the worst pass blocking O line. Thankfully they got him re-signed, even if it might have been a little bit of an overpay. He's good. Your receiving room was bad last year. CeeDee Lamb was an all-pro level receiver. Outside of that, Schultz wasn't as good as he was the year before, though he was pretty good. Gallup was super inconsistent. Gallup has never really been a separator to me. He's been like a big play, contested catch, sideline, clutch guy. But if you're relying on him to get separation, I think you're going to have issues. Noah Brown as your number 2 entering a season is just a recipe for disaster, even though I think he played above what was expected. So credit to him. I'm not going to get mad at him for, the Cowboys office not preparing enough. You saw this once we got to the playoffs. The Cowboys were trotting Zeke out there because I think he was getting paid $17 million a year. So I think they wanted to make the investment worthwhile. Once you got to the playoffs, you saw Tony Pollard getting all the carries. Tony Pollard was better than Zeke last year. I don't think he'll get re-signed after this year, but he was a Pro Bowl player. He might not be as good this year either, coming off a leg break, but I just think that this whole team, I think the tight end situation is going to be fine. The receiver room should be top 10 at the very least with Brandon Cooks. It should be top 10 at the very least. I'm going to bank on Dak not being mid because he wasn't great last year, even though he didn't have a lot of help. I'm going to bank on him returning to Pro Bowl form. The O line, the depth scares me, but on paper, if no one gets injured, it should be good. It should be top 2/3 or top 33%, hopefully top 25. Um, you go on the other side of the defense. The Marvin Overshown was a loss in the preseason. I think your linebacker room is thin outside of LVE, who's good. But everywhere else, I think that this defense has the chance to be at the very least top three. You have arguably the best defender in the NFL with Micah. Tank is always going to be a good number two. Sam Williams look good. You have good depth at edge. Your defensive interior is okay. It's not great, but I think it's average, which it, you should have good run stopping because Jonathan Hankins helped you tremendously last year. That was a good trade. Hopefully, Mozzie Smith mid-season is like a certified starter or like a high snaps player. They'll need him. He looked good in his final preseason game. Osa's looked good as a pass rusher. I think you have the best corner tandem in the league with Diggs. I think Diggs is the most overhated player in the league. I think he's a top 3 to 5 corner. Gilmore was good last year. You have maybe the best safety depth in the league. And yeah, I just don't really think that this team has a lot of weaknesses. And the places they do have weaknesses like linebacker, that's not where having weakness is necessarily going to kill a season. I just think that they've gotten better. They didn't lose a lot of people. I mean, outside of Schultz, but I think Jake Ferguson and Schoonmaker can replace that production together. And yeah, I could see the Eagles winning it again, but I think that the Cowboys, going 12-5 last season with a mediocre offense, in my opinion, and I think the offense is going to be good next year. On the other hand, or this year, on the other hand, the Eagles did a great job of replacing a ton of starters they lost on defense, but unless these rookies and the people they brought in play like all-stars, I think that the defense is going to be at the same level. I've said before, and I'm not trying to hate, I thought that the Eagles' defense last year was overrated. I think they beat up on bad teams, but when you saw them go against elite offenses like the Cowboys at the end of the season and the Chiefs, they struggled to get stops. They were getting ran on. They were basically getting had the whole game against the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. That was all the offense carrying them. The X factor with the Eagles, though, if Jordan Carter or Jalen Carter, excuse me, sorry. If Jalen Carter lives up to the hype or the talent and instantly comes in and plays at like an Aaron Donald level, then yes, I could very well seeing them win this division. If he can come in and immediately be the best defender on the team, yes, I think. In fact, I think if that happens, they could win the Super Bowl because he has the talent to be an all-time great. At least from what I saw at Georgia, he looked generational. But outside of that, I think that they could have gotten better on offense. I'm surprised they didn't take a third receiver high or like a second running back. They brought in a lot of people, and I think that they tried to trade for Jonathan Taylor. If they get Taylor, I think then they will probably win the division, and they have room to make trades. So I could very well see them winning the division. And I think that the second game against the Cowboys, that's always a classic. The second game where the Eagles play the Cowboys is always like must see television. It's prime time. The NFL would be foolish not to have that matchup on prime time. But I have them slightly worse than the Cowboys. Like I said, I think that they had to address a lot of holes in the offseason while the Cowboys overall added to and then really lose a lot of talent. So third, Washington, Sam Howell looked okay. I think they have a good receiving room. I think that the offense is mid, but the defense is always scrappy. I feel like Washington is always a team where you don't want to catch them. You don't want to meet them on an off day because they're always going to play rough. They're always going to play not dirty, but they're going to be gritty. And if you're not ready, they'll punch you in the mouth. They have maybe a top 5 defense, especially with drafting corners early. I could see them if they get the corner situated, or I forgot the guy they drafted. He was good at Mississippi State. He had a lot of picks. But if this D line can get to people early, especially the defensive interiors, the interior, I could see that corner getting a lot of picks. Ball hawk. I think that the team is mid, but I also think that they're good in some spots. Collectively, I think it's like a 500 roster, but I do think they have some talent. And finishing fourth, I could see the Giants finishing third. I could eat my words because we play them opening the Sunday night game. I'm just not on high. I see this team as a regression. I feel like whenever the Giants have had one of these years where they surprise everybody, the next year they fall back down to earth. It was the same thing in 2016 where they got a new coach, the team surprised, they made the playoffs, but then next year, I think that the league figures them out. I'm not high on Daniel Jones. I think he's a high level backup to decent starter. The offense, they did get some talent. I'll give them that. But Darren Waller needs to stay healthy. I think that this is a prove it team. I want to see Saquon stay healthy. I want to see Darren Waller stay healthy. I'm trying to think of the receiver. He beat Sauce Gardner in the preseason, at least from what I saw a few times. And I wouldn't be surprised if he burned the Cowboys because the Cowboys can't defend speed. They've struggled with speed. And there was a clip. This is like a fun fact. There was a clip of the Cowboys receiver coach was working out Jalen Hyatt, and he basically insinuated that he was a speed guy only. So I wouldn't be surprised if Jalen Hyatt was like, okay, I'm going to show this guy what's up. But even then, I'll give Giants fans actually, you know what? This is what I'll say about the Giants. I could see another 2007 situation where they get smacked by the Cowboys twice in the season, but then the D line, because they definitely have the talent on the D line, then tightens up, and then they go into the wild card or they go into the playoffs as the heavy underdog, and they start upsetting everybody, including the Cowboys. I could very well see that because I think the defense will be okay, but I don't think that their talent matches up well enough against the other powerhouses in the division. I don't think their receiver rooms are nearly as good as the other 3 teams. I think that their O-line is a bit overrated. I think that their D-line is maybe not quite as good as the Cowboys or the Eagles. I just said that the Washington roster was mid and the Giants are decent, but I just like Washington's grit. And I'm going to predict that the Giants have a regression. I think that last year it was a bit of a, not an anomaly, but you're going to play a tough schedule this year. I could see them being better, but I have them finishing fourth, which in the NFC East isn't too bad because I think that this is going to be one of the best divisions to end the year. NFC North, this might be a shocker. I'm not quite as high on the Lions as other people. I have Green Bay finishing first. Jordan Love has looked decent. They have really good running backs. I think that they're deep at receiver. They don't have like a number 1, which is concerning, but decent tight ends, decent receiver room overall. They've drafted a lot of guys in day 2. The O-line should be good. The defense needs to be good with 7 first-round picks. They have no excuse because they didn't play up to their standard or what they should have been last year. I'm going to bank on them turning it around this year. I think that this is the most talented roster in the NFC North. I don't think they're going to be like contenders, but I think that they should be good. Like I said, I just think that they have talent everywhere. They need more X factors like superstars. And they might be trading some talent away even, but yeah, I'm going to bank on them just over talenting the rest of the teams in this division. The Lions are still making the playoffs, but the receiving room, I think people are underestimating how much of a hit it's taken. They didn't really lose a beat with losing TJ Hawkinson, but DJ Chark left, and I thought he was good down the stretch. Jamison Williams, I don't think that this is good for his career because he only had like one catch last season. And now not only did he miss basically the entirety of last year with an ACL injury, but now he's missing the first 6 games due to suspension. Outside of Amon-Ra St. Brown, I'm not seeing a lot of passing help, which concerns me with Jared Goff. But the O-line is going to continue to be top of the league. And I love their OC. I'm surprised he's not a head coach yet. The running game should be really good. I'm a big Jahmyr Gibbs fan. And I think that the front seven defense should be pretty good. I'm not going to say it's going to be great, but it should be average at the very least. I like Aiden Hutchinson. And they had Justin Houston. They had another James Houston. They had another rookie pass rusher who surprised. But the secondary outside of Kirby Joseph the safety tandem should be good, but I think that the cornerbacks are going to be really bad, and I think they're going to get cooked there. I think the roster is good enough to maybe scrape in as like the 7th seed in the playoffs, but I think they need a few more X factors to be considered like, okay, this team is going to make some noise, but I think they're good enough to make the playoffs in a weak NFC. 3rd place, the Bears. I like what they've done. I think that I liked Bryce Young, but I think they fleeced the Panthers in that trade. There's no reason the Panthers should have had to given up DJ Moore along with 2 firsts and like 2 seconds. I like DJ Moore. I think they don't have a lot of depth, but like I said, DJ's good. Cole Kmet's good. Khalil Herbert, I think, is good. The O-line has routinely gotten better. They've added there. I'm not as high on Justin Fields as other people. Like, I don't have him as a dark horse MVP candidate, but he can make moves running the game. I think that the team can beat a few teams just running it alone. He's probably the best dual threat at least the best running quarterback in the NFL right now. The defense should be good. It maybe to decent. I don't think it's going to be great, but they've spent a lot of talent. The linebackers should be good. Yeah, I think that the Bears defense is always decent. It looks decent on paper, at least. I think that this is going to be a mid team, probably around 500. Last place, I am not understanding why people are touting the Vikings as a playoff team. I've seen people say their O-line's okay. Based off what I saw from the Cowboys game last year, that O-line got smacked. So against good pass rushes, I think that Kirk Cousins is going to get killed. He's not a scrambler. The passing game should be top 10 because you have the best receiver, arguably in the NFL. TJ Hawkinson's good, Pro Bowl caliber. Jordan Addison should be good, and KJ Osborne's a good number 3. But running game, I think it's going to be mid. And based off everything I've seen, losing talent, players getting older, I think that this defense is going to be it's going to be terrible. This team is going to make my Caleb Williams tank list because I think that this division is going to be okay to good. And I think that the Vikings are just going to get cooked in the division. We saw what the Giants offense did to this defense. And I don't know if the Kirk Cousins I like Kirk, but I don't know if that's going to be enough I don't know if the offense is going to be enough to take over a horrible defense. Because I think the offense is going to be top 10. I think that the Vikings could very well be the worst defense in the league next year. And I could see that equate to getting blown out, or not blown out, but losing a lot of games. So have this team on the moving off Kirk Cousins and tanking for Caleb train. So with the NFC South, I think that this is going to be the most mid or /500 division. I think a lot of these teams are going to finish around 500. The Saints, I think, will be decent, but I don't know if that's saying much. The team's getting older in a lot of good spots, but even then, the defense was good down the stretch. Michael Thomas is back. Chris Olave was good. I think, like I said, I think that this team is aging. But I still think that these aging players like Kamara, Thomas, and Jordan, I forgot the name of the edge. I think that they could still contribute. I just think that this team has the most talent likely out of this whole conference or this whole division. This one's hard to predict because I just see a lot of mid when I look at these teams. No offense, but I think Derek Carr is probably the best quarterback here. But even then, I see this team going like 10-7, 9-8, and be just making the playoffs off virtue of winning the division. The defense could be good though. And second place, I think I'm higher on Baker than most. I don't think he's great. He's above average. And I think that they have weapons still. They lost their slot guy to the year, but Chris, okay, I'm butchering his name. No, Chris Godwin, that's correct. Chris Godwin, when he's healthy, he's not a Pro Bowl caliber player anymore, but he's still good. Mike Evans is a Hall of Famer. You have decent, I think the O line isn't going to be great everywhere, but I think you have some decent pieces. You have a great left tackle. Running game's okay. Tight end room's okay. Even though it's aging, I think the front seven still has a lot of talent. You have a defensive minded coach. Not much to say. There's not much to say about this division. I think they'll finish around 500. The Falcons, I think that the Falcons could win it because they did bring in a lot of talent. But even then, outside of that, Desmond Ritter's the X factor. Because if Desmond Ritter plays well, I think that the O line and the running game is good enough with a few skill pieces like Drake London, Kyle Pitts. They got, you know what? Actually, talking about the roster, I could actually see them winning the division, or at least finishing second. Right now, I have them at third though, because I don't think that the defense could still be mid. I think that there's a lot of room for this team to be mid to great. If they're going to run the ball a lot, but so they'll win a few games based off that alone, because I think they'll be able to run the ball well. But if Desmond Ritter comes out and plays well, I could see this team winning the division. And if the defensive free agent acquisitions like Calais Campbell and Jesse Bates step up, then yes, I could see them winning the division. Maybe even sneaking in as the seventh seed. But based off what I've seen in recent years, and I don't know. With Kyle Pitts, they struggled to give him the ball, albeit Marcus Mariota never should have been starting to begin with last season. But yeah, I'm just gonna have them for third for now. But this could change. I'm not confident about the third spot. I'm not confident about this whole division. Fourth place, I love Bryce Young. I had him as one of my best QB prospects ever, at least since I've started watching football. If he was a 6'4", this guy would be considered like the best prospect ever, in my opinion, because mentally, I think he's all there and then some. I think he's beyond his years. And they've added a lot of receiver / offensive help in free agency, but I still think this O-line's pretty mediocre. The defense is still young. I think the defense could be okay, but I don't think it's going to be elite. So once again, I could see them finishing above fourth, but for now, I think that this team, so it's a ways away from being a contender, even with a good quarterback prospect in Bryce. Last, this could be a shocker to some, but Seattle, I have winning the conference. Here, I'm going to need a drink of something because I'm probably going to go on this division for a while. Anyway, first place, everything I've heard about Seattle in the offseason, it's good. Like, I've heard that they've clicked. I don't think Gino's going to regress. I'm going to bank on their two rookie tackles taking another step forward. I'm going to bank on their O-line being better. I think that this could be the best receiving room in the NFL. I had Jackson Smith-Njigba as like a top 5 prospect. I think he's gonna have a Garrett Wilson type impact when he comes back from his wrist injury. I love Tyler Lockett. He might be the most underrated receiver in the league. DK, I think, is going to bounce back. He hasn't lived up to the Pro Bowl year from like 2 years ago, but even then, he's always a threat. I think the receiving room or running back room, when Kenneth Walker comes back from injury, or like, I think he's recovered, but he was good last year. I think the running backs aren't Pro Bowlers, but they do have a lot of depth there, a lot of above average people. I like the tight ends. The defense, the secondary is injured to start the year, but once they get healthy, it could be like a top 5 DB room in the league. I love their linebacker situation with Jordan Brooks and Bobby Wagner. The one question I have is with the D line, which is where, admittedly, I think you want to be the best on defense. But everything I've seen, it's been okay. I think, and then I wouldn't be surprised if they traded for like a pass rusher at some point. I have them winning the conference, not because I think that the best team in the NFC, but I think they get 4 free wins off LA and the Cardinals, and they'll probably split one with San Francisco. So there's 5 wins right there. They're gonna get 4 free wins. And I looked at their schedule and it wasn't too bad. They have a few tough games, but I think they have a lot of games where they should be somewhat of a favorite. I've looked at other NFC schedules and they're pretty tough. So I'm just gonna have the Seattle winning the conference. I'm not as confident in that prediction as I am the Bills one, but I have them winning the conference for now. I can see the 49ers easily winning this division again. And obviously, I have them making the playoffs. But the thing is with them, if they don't have Nick Bosa, yeah, that defense, they've shown the stats on TV. It's not nearly the same defense without Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa is going to get what he wants, especially because I think the 49ers always start off the year bad or shaky. And if they do that this year, I think they're going to panic and give him whatever he wants. The defense still will be good, but I like DeMeco Ryans. They lost Jimmy Ward, who was good. And I think that the quarterback situation is overblown. I mean, Brock Purdy's clearly the best guy on this roster. They got rid of Trey Lance. They got rid of the drama. Even then, I think they'll finish 11-6. I don't think that they're gonna go on the dominant run like they did last year to end the season. And I think that they'll struggle early, and that's when the Seahawks will win the division because I think they'll start off hot and they'll finish through hot. I think they're a little more balanced than the 49ers. The O-line's getting up there in age. You can hope that Debo comes back and has a bounce back year, but the roster's injury prone. Even then, they're going to be good. I'd put them in contenders category still. I'm probably just hating as a Cowboys fan, but I think that the Seahawks will finish a little stronger and then they'll end at the same level. And based off that, I think they'll have a better record. And I think that the 49ers secondary, that's one thing. They might need to trade for some people because outside of Charvarius Ward and Hafunga, or I probably butchered that guy's last name, I think that they're susceptible to getting burned by the Seahawks receivers because they have a lot of deep threats with DK and Tyler. Third place, the Rams. I think that this team might be shedding some players mid-season. If this team comes out and is trash, I could see them fetching a first for Donald and then turning around and fetching a first for Kupp if he comes back from his hamstring. This team, you can't fault them for winning a Super Bowl. They did sell out, not in a bad way, but they sold out to win a Super Bowl. Credit to them. They won the Super Bowl. Their risk paid off. But yeah, Stafford's getting up there in age. The team is not very talented. They've lost a lot of people from the Super Bowl run. But even then, with Kupp, with Donald, Donald and Darnold. No, why did I say Darnold? Okay, no. Stafford, Donald, and Kupp. They have 3 really good players right there. I don't think that Arizona has any good talent compared to that. So I think they'll go like 5-12 or something like that. The Cardinals, I don't have them on I'll put them on the Caleb Williams tank watch list, but it all depends on what Kyler does because Kyler's going to miss the start of the year. They're going to get blown out. I think they're going to start off 0-4. I think this team's intentionally going to be losing games when Kyler's not in there. They have 0 talent on offense outside of the guy who always drops stuff, the OU receiver, Marquise Brown Jr. Yeah, he's good, but he's not a number 1, and I think someone's going to struggle to get him the ball. Zach Ertz is old. The O-line is probably going to be bad. The defense is going to be trash. Yeah, this team is routinely finishing first overall in mock drafts. And if Kyler comes back and plays mediocre, yes, I could see them drafting Caleb Williams. But I think what the Cardinals are hoping happens is that Kyler comes back mid-season and he looks good, and then they parlay the first overall pick into like 3 or 4 first round picks. They might be taking Caleb Williams. I don't know. I mean, that's a long ways away. This is probably gonna be the worst team in the NFL. So by virtue or default, they're gonna finish fourth. So yep, that's it. If you liked the video, sir, something was probably wrong in here. So leave a comment if I got something wrong. Please be respectful though. The YouTube and the internet in general needs a lot more of that. Subscribe if you like the video. Leave a comment, and I'll probably be uploading a lot more during the season. Yep. Thanks for watching. Thanks and peace. Go enjoy Thursday night football. Don't get too mad if your team gets blown out. I need to work on not having heart attacks when the Cowboys are in barn burners or close nail biters. Peace.